Hey there, learners. Welcome back to another episode of trying to solve a 100-year-old family mystery. This is part 7, not a Helmer, question mark. So what we're exploring in this episode is what if it's not a Helmer. So we've been featuring pretty heavily on the whole Helmer clue because my great-grandfather was given the name Helmer at birth, which was rather unusual because it's a ethnically Swedish name, and there's no Swedish on my family. There's no Swedish in the birth mother's side of the family, so it was just there didn't seem to be a reason why Helmer was given to him at birth, and why Edna, the birth mother, was so insistent on him keeping that name. So with that being the only clue we had, we just went with it, but knowing full well that we may never know why the name Helmer was used, and maybe it had nothing to do with the father. Maybe it was a family friend. Maybe no disrespect to Edna, but maybe she had more than one suitor and she thought the father was Helmer. We don't know. I really wanted to investigate other avenues, forgetting the Helmer path and just trying to look at other matches and really trying to focus on other evidence. So my grandfather has had a match on 23andMe pretty much since the beginning, and this match also matches myself and my father, and I'm going to call her CMW. And what's interesting about her is that she actually had a lot of information on her profile, and she also had links to her trees on Ancestry, and she had multiple family trees for different sections of her family. So this is kind of like almost a dream match, I really want to see matches with a lot of information because it's super helpful, So one of her trees has four families within this tree that lived in Lynn County, Missouri at the right time. So this has been a big deal. I've been keeping an eye on this match for a very, very long time. I knew somehow she was key to figuring all this out. So the four families were the Carruthers, the Brown family, the Lomax family, and the Evans family. So these were the four families that she had in her tree that all had men living in Lynn County, Missouri at the right time. And no one in her tree that I could find matches up with anyone in our tree, and that is a big clue because a lot of these matches, the goal is to figure out how we are related to them. So if they have a tree, which is great, and we can look through the tree, and sooner or later we're going to find, oh, there's that person in our tree that's also in their tree. This must be how we're connected, and here we go, we found that line. With CMW, however, we are not we're not finding that connection. There's no one in our tree that's in her tree, and vice versa. When we're trying to find the family of an adoptee, this is what you're really looking for. You're trying to find a tree of a match that doesn't match your tree, because that is a big clue. So let's look at these families. Let's start off with the Browns and the Evanses. So this is the family, Sarah Leoma Brown. She married John Lewis Carruthers. So that's the Carruthers family. And the Lomax family is also on that side, on the Carruthers. The Browns, we have her paternal side, and then we have her maternal side with the Evans here. So, it's hard to research Brown and Evans surnames because they're so incredibly common names. I believe Brown is like the 5th most common surname in the United States. So, and Evans is pretty high up there too. So, I frequently see Browns, especially Brown, but also Evans in family trees of people that we know are not connected to this adoption mystery. So we find those names a lot in those trees, and several males from these families lived in Lynn County, Missouri at the right time. So any one of them could be the father, but it's hard to know for sure. We would have to have more information before we focused on the Brown side or the Evans side, just because of how common the names are. So that moves us to the Carruthers and the Lomax side. So what I tried to do, since these names are a bit more unusual, especially Carruthers, Lomax is, it's not completely uncommon. We're all sort of aware of the Lomax name. Carruthers was a bit of a new one for me. I did have to look up how it's pronounced, and it is Carruthers. So I decided to go on Family Tree DNA and just see if I can find if there are surname projects for these surnames, and see if the general Y haplogroup matches up with ours. So with the Lomax family, it was mostly R. Probably R1b, I can't remember exactly, but they all started with R, and as you know, my dad is IM253, I1, and that was narrowed down to IZ140. But so most of the people in the Lomax surname project have the haplogroup starting with R. There were some I1s, some IM253s, but most of them were R. So then the Carruthers, this was a big one. There were only like 7 or 8 Carruthers on the surname project at Family Tree DNA, and they were of the IM253 haplogroup. So that was a big clue. I mean, look, just because they're from the IM253, that doesn't mean there are ancestors. That's a big haplogroup. It could very easily just be a coincidence, but with what we have right now, Brown and Evans both being too popular to really pin down any sort of haplogroup, Lomax being mostly R, and Carruthers, of the few that are listed, they're all IM253. That is a clue. So I was pretty happy to see that, and I decided to start focusing on the Carruthers. So in the Carruthers family, these are the parents of John Lewis Carruthers, which was the husband of Sarah Leoma Brown from the previous slide. So they had many, many, many children, and of course we know that their first that the husband of Sarah Leoma Brown was John Lewis Carruthers. But I quickly ruled him out because he was not in the area at the time. So I could tell that we are not connected to John Lewis Carruthers. So he was crossed off the list. Now, he had many, many siblings, and most of them were female. Most of his siblings were sisters. So all of them, of course, are ruled out here. But he had a few brothers. Some of them died before the incident could occur, but he had 2 brothers that were alive at the time and living in Lynn County, Missouri, and that was James Bush Carruthers and Howard Colgate Carruthers. So John Lewis Carruthers, not in area. James Bush, that should be an and. James Bush and Howard Colgate Carruthers were. So that is the Carruthers and Lomax side. So far, Lomax seems to be less likely, and Carruthers seems to be the most likely. So now I want to look at other trees, and that's from GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, etc. But this will mostly be GEDmatch here, and Brown and Evans show up in multiple trees, like I've said before, so it's hard to pinpoint there. But there was a line of Browns in a tree that matches one of that was attached to one of my grandfather's matches. And this tree, it just there was something interesting about this family. I still haven't found if they are connected. Maybe I'm in the wrong branch of his family. I don't know. But this Thomas Cleveland Brown, born 1884 to 1932, his father was William Riley Brown, and his mother was Elizabeth Varner. And Riley's parents were William H., goes by Sterling Brown, and Elizabeth Morgan. So I don't think we're at all connected to this Thomas Cleveland Brown because he was not in the area at the time. But a lot of these, the further up, they were all from Missouri, which I found quite interesting. And so far, I have not found how or if they are at all connected to the Brown family in CMW's tree. But another interesting thing was this this Varner surname of Elizabeth Varner. There are several, there's a grouping in the Z140 haplogroup project of people whose last name is Varnes, Varnes, instead of ER. And as we know, a lot of times surname variants are connected to each other, even though they're technically different names, but they are variants of each other. So I was quite interested in this Varner, this Elizabeth Varner, thinking maybe we were attached that way, and then trying to figure out how these Browns might be connected to CMW's Browns. And this is a mystery that I may never solve. Again, I might be in the wrong branch of this person's tree, and I don't know. So there were no Lomaxes in any trees. I mean, I have not come across the name Lomax in any match other than CMW. So I continue to feel that Lomax is the least likely possibility. Again, with Brown and Evans, it's hard to know because they're so popular. So GEDmatch also had a match of my grandfather who had a Crothers in his tree. So this match from the Crothers, this was from a match of someone who lives in Australia, and the Crothers, not Carruthers, and again, this is a surname variant, so it could still be connected. This family was from Northern Ireland, and they immigrated to Tasmania in the late 1800s. And this was the only time I had ever seen anything close to Carruthers in any other tree. So obviously, I'm going to keep my eye on this. But I still can't find any connection back to CMW's tree. So we have all these elements, but they're not quite connecting. And we haven't been able to find any other tree. While CMW's tree seems to be there's something key to it. There's something about it, especially since there's no one in our tree on her tree, and there's no one in her tree on our tree, and she has lots of people living in Lynn County, Missouri at the right time. It's just obvious that something about this match is key to unraveling this mystery. But unfortunately, we can't seem to find any other tree that connects back to hers. So, the next steps. My dad, I sent him for Christmas the Y12 STR test from Family Tree DNA. And the reason I did the Y12 test instead of the higher up tests like the Y25 or Y37, Y67, Y111, or the big Y test is because obviously the higher up you go, the prices are, extreme. They get very, very high. A big Y test is something like $600. So unless that's donated to us, that's just not going to happen. And the Y111 test is also super high, expensive. Same with the Y67. It gets a lot better at the Y37, but the Y12 test was only $60, and I say only, but because that's still pretty expensive. And so I went with the Y12 test, not just for cost, but also because that's what was recommended by the person who heads up the Z140 project. He recommended that I go with the Y12 STR test from Family Tree DNA, and then a panel test, the Z140 panel test from YSeq. So, and what the STR test does is it gives us a better chance of giving us a surname, someone we're going to match with, or a grouping of names that we're going to match with. So maybe we'll see Carruthers on there. Maybe we'll see Browns. Maybe we'll see Evans or even Lomax, which was the least likely possibility I was thinking of. But maybe we'll see that. Maybe we'll match with a surname. And that'll give us a clue. Even if it's not taking over all of our matches, if we see one of those surnames on there, especially if it's the Carruthers or the Lomax, which are a lot less common than Brown or Evans, then that's a big clue. So that's what my dad did over the Christmas break. And spoiler alert, we have gotten the results from that, and they have been quite surprising. So then the other step we need to do is asking my paternal uncle to please allow me access to his Ancestry DNA account. My dad's brother tested at Ancestry a long time ago, and his account has kind of just been sitting there because I haven't been able to have access to it. So another spoiler alert, he has allowed me access to his account, and it has been amazing. So why did I want access to the Ancestry DNA account? Well, one, my dad and my uncle, even though they're full siblings, they're not going to have the exact same DNA. They're not identical brothers, they're just brothers, they're siblings. So my uncle inherited different DNA from his parents than my dad inherited. So we'll see different matches. Plus, Ancestry DNA, the big reason why a lot of people would go with them if they're doing genealogy research is because they have the largest database. And, that's one of the pros to Ancestry DNA. We didn't go with Ancestry for a myriad of reasons. And I'm glad we went with 23andMe, but it's also really, the Ancestry DNA having such the large database, plus the ability to link your DNA to your tree, is pretty tempting. And my dad actually, right after Christmas with some of the sales, he actually just bought an Ancestry DNA kit for himself. So he will himself be having his DNA there as well. So that's good. But in the meantime, I really wanted to get my uncle's Ancestry account so that I could see his matches, and a lot of them are going to have attached trees, which is going to be super helpful in trying to figure out which family my great-grandfather's father was from. So that brings us to the end of this tutorial, or not tutorial, this presentation. So what's next? Trying to solve a 100-year-old family mystery, part 8, where I'm going to go over the WATO tool from the new tool on DNA Painter, and WATO stands for What Are the Odds? And I will tell you that this has been an invaluable tool in figuring this out. And again, spoiler alert, we have figured it out for the most part. There's still a couple mysteries, but we've pretty much figured it out, and we will definitely be talking about that next episode. And the WATO tool has really helped and will help with one of our remaining mysteries. So thank you so much for sticking with me, and I apologize for not having these out as often as I would like. It does take me some time to make these presentations and to set aside time for doing the voiceover. So thanks for sticking around, and I will see you next episode. Later, learners. Bye.